I'm
All
so
right.
glad to see you all. And I'm in Prague. It's the morning here. I've got my morning cup. I'm about to head over to the Academy of Sciences and begin our last full day of sessions. It's been a whirlwind globally. We're online. We're in Sydney. We're in Prague, and of course we'll be in Maine next week, where I'll be with Glenn Page for our workshop. We have over 750 people taking part in this conference globally. The Whova platform has been swamped with messages, over 5,000 messages the last time I checked, on 26 community boards. This has been a really exciting event. So the transformations community has come a long way since our first gathering in 2013 in Oslo. Since then, a lot of things have been going on, dreadful things as well as promising things. Calls have been growing for systems change and transformation in many sectors, in energy, food, transport, health, finance, so many places. It's become a global concern, and from the beginning times when we raise these issues, now we've got the attention of the world. As things become more unstable, people are sensing and understanding and reacting and making change to improve our status quo. There's a demand for better knowledge about how to support transformational change. It's increasing, and we're here to help provide and support that need. A greater space is opening up for deeper conversations about the issues involved, the ethical dilemmas, and what it means to be a scholar and a practitioner. What does it mean to be a transformations practitioner and scholar? And more deeply, how can we be fully human in our rapidly transforming world? So in this dialogue session, we're going to bring together a panel of transformations experts who are all also the people who've led this transformations community over the last 10 years, as we enter into our 10th year. So we're going to explore today how this conference series began, how it unfolded, how the conversations and actions changed over the years, and how as a community we can better support the kind of change we all believe is needed. So I want to introduce our speakers. They're the heart and the bedrock of the transformations community over the last 10 years. There are our conference conveners and organizers, Chris's predecessors. So first, Karen O'Brien. Of course, we all know Karen. She's the chair of the original Transformations Conference in 2013. She's professor of human geography at the University of Oslo in Norway and co-founder of Sea Change. It's an organization that supports public engagement with transformations to sustainability. Karen's research explores the relationship between adaptation and transformations to sustainability. And we're also familiar with her work. She's currently also co-chair of the International Science Policy Platform for Biodiversity Ecosystem Services, or at BEST. The Transformations Change Assessment is going on globally. She was, as I mentioned, she was the first. She founded this series with an understanding that we needed a conferencing approach that would engage action researchers with reflective practitioners and move beyond understanding transformations to understanding how we can make change. Our next speaker is Per Olsen. He is the second Transformations Community Conference organizer in 2015 in Stockholm. Per is Associate Professor and Deputy Science Director of the Stockholm Resilience Center at Stockholm University. And his current research is on the capacities for navigating just transformations toward equitable and sustainable futures. So Per, in addition to the many things he does, he leads a number of transdisciplinary initiatives that connect research to practice at the cutting edge of transformations. He designs and facilitates changemaker programs, advises corporate CEOs and philanthropic organizations. As you can tell, all these folks are entrepreneurs who are involved not only in academic work, but in making change, creating institutions in the real world. Johan Fazy, he was the chair of the 2017 conference in Dundee, which was just an amazing place, a heartfelt conference where so many connections were made. Johan is professor and director of strategy at the Department of Environment at the University of York. And his work develops know-how and capacity for stewarding transformations in individuals, organizations, and society. His 80 research publications are in resilience, transformation, change, sustainability. And he's also a shamanic practitioner using diverse techniques to help people work with inner transformations and overcome trauma, reconnect with nature, and work with the challenges people face as we all try to make sense of our place in this changing world. Paulina Aldunce, chair of the Transformations 2019 meeting in Santiago. Paulina is the professor, or she's with you. You know all about her. She's the professor of the University of Chile, and she's associated researcher at the Center for Risk and Disaster Reduction, and is also at the Center for Climate and Resilience Research. She, in addition to being a social scientist with a background in environmental planning and management, with an expertise in climate change adaptation and transformation, she's also the lead author and review editor on the IPCC reports for 3 reports. Finally, our last conference panelist and expert joining us today is David Tabarra. He was the co-chair of the Transformations 21 meeting, which was to be held in Barcelona, but had to be shifted to online during COVID. So he was our experimenter who brought on so many of the innovations in conferencing that we're still playing with today. So David is an independent researcher with over 25 years experience in international interdisciplinary research on knowledge integration for sustainability. He's a member of the Earth Commission Working Group on Transformations to the Global Commons Alliance, and associated research at the Global Climate Forum and the Autonomous University of Barcelona. And so he's done so many things, including the exciting Tipping Points Plus project, which he presented in depth at our last conference. And he was along with Diego Galafasi, he was of course, the chair of this online conference, adapting and making an amazing event for everyone, despite the challenges of COVID. So welcome panel, thank you for joining us. So I would like to begin, the way we're gonna structure this conversation today is we're gonna begin with kind of a chronological tale. We're gonna explore how the community and the conferences emerged and unfolded. So I'll ask each in the order in which they organized our events. I'm gonna ask them to share what it was like and set the context for how we developed this community and how we responded to our evolving sense of the challenges of transformations over time. Then we're going to sort of see what's in store for us now in the second phase of this conversation. So what's the state of play in relation to transformation now? What are the opportunities in the eyes of our panelists? And finally, I'll finish with a few words about where we are as a community and where we're headed. Can't wait to share that with you. So let's begin with Karen, our originator, our founder. Karen, how did this begin? Why did you originally set up a transformations conference? What was going through your head?
I guess I get to start with the once upon a time, which was 10 years ago or more than 10 years ago. It really started with a proposal for a center of excellence on transformations in a changing climate. And this was the time, back when the IPCC special report on extreme events was coming out and the 5th assessment was underway, and transformation was just starting to be talked about within the global change communities. Future Earth was getting going, etc. And we had a very exciting proposal that was really collaborative. It was holistic, integrative, reflexive, and it didn't get funded. And all of us who were part of it decided that, we're not going to wait for some stamp of approval to go forward. And what should have been the project launch, we decided we're going to do it anyway. And that was Johan and Per and Mark Howden at CSIRO. And, we just said that, let's just figure out how to do this bottom up. So with my colleague Linda Signa, we really pieced together and patchworked together the the funding for this. And I think at that time the socio-technical transitions community was very vibrant, but there wasn't this space for the deeper conversations about what do we mean by transformations and how does it come about. So I think it was really very much an effort to, we're going to do it anyway. And that's kind of led through it's really exciting to see both in Sydney and in Prague that these are continuing and that the community is growing. And thanks to your work, Bruce, also. Oops, you muted.
You're muted, Bruce.
Oh, there I am. Thanks. Thanks, Karen. Yeah, appreciate that origin story. I wish I could have been there for the first one, but I was there for the second. Per, tell us about 2015. What was the key purpose there? How'd you pick up this baton?
Yeah, thinking about the Oslo conference now really warms my heart. It was really a nice one. We continued then building on the Oslo conference and focused a bit more in Stockholm on the people-planet relationship, which is one of many important relationships as part of transformations. But we wanted to focus on that. And also we had the Anthropocene in the title there, just to help also people sort of look at the big picture and use Anthropocene as just sort of lifting our gaze or our focus from the many times the local focus of transformation to the really sort of the planetary big large scale transformation. So and also what I loved about the Oslo conference also, and that we continued with, was to have this sort of unconference idea that we wanted to maximize people's chance to have new conversations, because the idea was also for the Oslo conference and the Stockholm conference was to sort of building up the theory of change, like that many large-scale changes starts with a new conversation, so we wanted to maximize people's opportunity for that. So we had the speed talks, we called something the mashup, and etc., just to sort of to have that form of organizing. We also did the T labs there in Stockholm, and we started the T labs, and also my friends did the logo, which is still the triangles that forms a hexagon, or the little cubes forming a big cube. So that was also, and I think it was part of that sort of creativity, and that I think is the spirit of all these conferences, is the sort of also the focus on creativity, art, music, etc., which has been carried through.
I hear you. Breaking out of the conventional academic presentational mode and trying to develop interaction and dialogue to reflect our commitment to practice and action. Yeah, and I love the little triangles. Every year we're trying to what can we do differently with that logo? So over to you, Johan. I understand you were eager to take this movement that Per describes away from a conventional conferencing approach and do something creative with it to break the mold yourself. What was that like? How'd you do that, and why?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Bruce. I think it's important to remember where this came from. The conferences. This was after the conference in 2013. A bunch of us got together, Per, myself, and Mark Howden got together and said, well, we need to keep this going. So we were running these conferences just without any real major support behind it. I think that conversation you and I had, Bruce, the other day when I said, are we still doing it by working on a shoestring? You said, no, we're doing it by eating our shoes, and I think that was really the kind of ethos of it. So I was very fortunate that I had a little bit of leading coming up to the Dundee conference in 2017. And then I really, really wanted to push and break the mold of this sort of unconference style that Per was talking about. And I guess I did that in three main ways. One was that I tried to design the conference as a transition in its own right. So it had a beginning, a middle, and an end that was specifically designed a bit like a sort of, how do we let go of things? How do we build things within it, and how do we take that forward? And there were many different elements that were involved in that. But one of the things that we did was trying to introduce some kind of collective endeavor in the middle of the conference. So that was 10 parallel sessions running with 10 facilitators that I begged, borrowed and stole from their time and everything that they came in. And some of you are involved in that. Chris Reedy was one of them, to help facilitate a simultaneous process using a futures method called 3 Horizons that then allowed us to come up with something collective as a result of the conference. And that was not straightforward to do. And then the other really key element of that was about bringing in the arts, but actively integrating the arts as part of helping us go through this process as a transition. So building a sculpture that was then burnt, that helped us let go of what we held and what we wanted to let go of to create the space for new things to emerge, and so on. So I think that was really the key element, and we built on that notion of the T labs. So we really tried to create sessions that were much more practice oriented as well. So that was really what we were trying to do, and cement that ethos and that feeling of a conference that was different. That led to the creation for this conference in Sydney, the Department of Magic, which I love, which is about, you know, how do we continue to experiment and evolve and create those spaces.
Yeah, I hear you. Creativity, the arts, engagement. I remember that amazing 3 Horizons process, and then that massively co-authored paper that you led afterwards. It was that idea of sort of leading on from the conference to make a broader contribution and share what we learned with others. They set all these new bars, all these new possibilities for us to build on. So Paulina, then the challenge was taking this transformations community out of Western Europe to the global South. What was your experience there, and what did we learn from it?
Yeah, so, well, it was a great experience, I have to say. I just think differently, open my wings and fly very high in a country that is very conservative. So people and scientists were looking at us, what are we doing? Crazy things. But at the end, we proved that science can be different and we can transform science. So that was very good, that make that point. And Transformation Conference is the space to do science differently. Big challenges, yes, they were very big challenges to take to the South for the first time at the conference. And remember that in the open plenary, I talk about these challenges, but I highlight important not to see it as a challenge, but more as an opportunities. And from this opportunity, we build the pillars of the conference, if you remember, that Susie Morser was mentioning at the end of the conference too. So I think that is one of the most important learning. One of the most important learning is to see that even if we are in a very complex and difficult world today, we have to see and look for the opportunities to transform. One of the big challenge, of course, was language barriers, especially because we opened the conference to non-academic. And in a country like mine, people doesn't speak English. So that is something that was one of the big challenge, but art, once again, helped us a lot. The other main learning is that it's important to take this conference to the South. It has been 5, oh, sorry. I think that transformation is needed in the North and in the South. So I think that we have to maybe make a little bit more balance between the conference in the South and in the North. Transformation is needed, included the South. And one last thing that I want to say, and apologize from the beginning before saying this, because maybe you're going to feel a little bit uncomfortable. But transformation is also about feeling a little bit uncomfortable. So I'm going to take 1 minute to say this. I'm very sorry if you feel uncomfortable, but I have to say it. Most of the people, when they came to me to talk about transformation 2019, they talk about the social outbreak and the protest, not about the conference. So in one hand, that made me a little bit sad because we experienced so many beautiful things in the conference. But in the other way, made me think, because many of them say, well, it was, you know, an opportunity to face and experience transformation in the ground. What is that? Academic tourism? Really? I mean, if we see, I mean, that social outbreak, with so much violence, with people torture, women rapes, people, more than 300 people lost in the vision because of policemen shooting in the face, dead people, all neighborhood burned. Is that the transformation we need? Transformation is about equity. And in those kind of social outbreaks, the ones that suffer more and not the privileged one, is not us, is there. So I think if we think and we justify transformation in the old-fashioned way based in violence, we are failing. I think that that is a point to reflect about transformation, not based in this kind of violence. So sorry if I make you feel uncomfortable, because many of you approach me saying that, and I don't think that we should see transformation based in violence.
I hear you, Pauline. I stayed in the country a week afterwards and tried to talk to people and get to know what was going on, and try to understand the deeper challenges that were rooted in the social inequalities in Chilean society. It was really eye-opening, and I've stayed interested and engaged ever since. So for me, it was an opportunity to fall in love with the country and the people, and to do that in the context of the transformations ethos was a privilege, and that was I would say, kind of a life-changing moment for me. So I thank you for hosting that amazing event and bringing all these issues, as you just mentioned, to our attention. These critical issues, so important. Perhaps we can pick up on that during our discussion. So but before we do, I want to go to our last conference organizer, David. You had the fun task of managing a conference during the pandemic. So how did that work? In what way, how did we take this moment of this world in turmoil and hold a space to think about the possibilities of transformation?
Well, thank you, Bruce, and everybody. The Transformations Conference that was meant to be happening in Barcelona, it was a personal shock, and a shock for many as well. First, we had already booked everything, the venue, the organization, everything was already booked, and 2 weeks later, we were all on lockdown. So we didn't know what to do. We had no experience in online conferences. Some people even knew what Zoom was. So even in my project, people, it's only just to remind you that it was only 2 years ago. So it seems like a long time ago, but actually now we are all working on Zoom, Teams, wherever, but just 3 years ago, that was not the case. So it was a massive effort, and it was massive effort, which I think hopefully it was quite successful, because we actually managed to get more than 500 people in it. Because we had a great help, and in particular, I had the great collaboration of Diego Galafasi, who is a multi-talented guy who is able to break the boundaries between art and science and everything that is in front of him. And unfortunately, he cannot be with us here. So I had the help of Diego Galafasi and also other people like Vera Minster from the research, sustainability research and innovation, who allow us to have the platform. And then from there, also with the help of a team of my project, about 15 early career researchers, we managed to gather that, because it was a massive effort, and working in uncertainty. Even some people got angry because they expected to be lecturing as they used to do, and we left them only very little time to talk. So it was a very massive effort, but we learned a lot, I think. But at the same time, I just want to say that it was tragic for many people as well. Some people suffered, had personal difficulties, and still some are still there. And I think the world is different now from that situation. We relate different. We mustn't forget that the world was different 3 years ago. And maybe this is also, as maybe Paulina was saying, is an opportunity to do things differently, but also we mustn't forget that the world has changed. I just wanted to refer to a sentence that Ivan was very helpful as well in that organization, and you, of course. Jürgen was saying that we now confront the end of the world as you know it, and sometimes I imagine that maybe this is the end of the world as we imagine it. because and now we are learning to know how it is, and we had a completely different idea of how the world works, and now actually there is an opportunity to engage with the world and try to learn and maybe reframe how we used to think about it. So thank you very much for helping, or allowing me to be with you here.
You know, when I reflect back on this experience and the and our continual attempts to experiment as a community with new forms of conferencing and to engage with different communities to try new things, I think of this year's conference as reflecting so many of the lessons and so many of the innovations that you, the previous organizers, originated. Our online component this year is directly traced to David, the work you did to bring everything online and see what the potential of that space was. And we're still exploring it of that. And our opportunity this year to work with Julia Leventon in Czech Globe was an extension of the spirit that you developed, Paulina, in terms of how do we move this space into outside of the sort of metropoles, the conventional Western institutions, out into the places that where different kinds of conversations and communities exist and take place and engage, truly create a global community. And we've been talking a lot about that this week, like what's the difference here in Eastern Europe as opposed to Western Europe. And of course, Australia is pretty far away as well. And we're committed to continuing that growth toward becoming a global organization with global offerings and want your partnership in making that happen. So let's go to the next phase of our conversation, where we're going to, as we've already started to make this transition, focus on the now. What are the opportunities we have, and how can we move forward? What can we do as a community of scholars and practitioners, this kind of mix-up that we have between action research and reflective practice? What changes do we want to support, and how can we do it? So I'll just throw out a question and indicate who might, if they choose to, give us a start, and then we'll see whoever else wants to pick up the conversation and move from there. So I'll start with you, Karen. I want to ask you a big question, but since you're doing the global assessment, I think this is in your bailiwick. Where do you think the world is at now in terms of transformation?
Well, I think that's like the key question that we're facing here, is that you know, we are going through a transformation, as we've heard just from David. And I think most people realize that we can't go on with business as usual. The risks are very clear, and governments are calling for transformative change, and there's a lot of talk, but the concept is also being used and abused in many ways so that it just becomes meaningless, because we need to transform. But it's often, you know, there's very little understanding of how we transform at the rate, the scale, the speed, and the depth. And I think that's what the community brings to it, is how do we actually do this in practice? And I think a lot of people in the world are feeling a lot of fear right now, because as Paulina said, it's not comfortable when we transform. It's like going from the caterpillar to the butterfly, where you have a breakdown of systems, and we will lose things. And so how do we move in that? How do we, you know, hold that space and realize the possibilities and potentials that Otto Scharmer talked about, that, you know, to actually, you know, presence the future right now. And I think that's the world is really needing that, like collectively, a community to help, you know, shift those conversations, but also shift the politics and the power relationships, and actually come up with results. So yeah, I think the world is ripe and ready, where maybe it wasn't quite 10 years ago.
Thanks, Karen. Yeah, who else wants to reflect on where we are now in terms of transformation?
I can come in, Bruce, if you like, on that one.
Please.
Yeah, I agree with Karen. I mean, I think that we have to sort of start to acknowledge and accept we're in a transformation, but really, really dig into what that means for us individually, because that means that acceptance is about is part of the process of letting go of the things ourselves personally that might be also holding back that transformation. And so when I think about, I mean, I've been reflecting a lot the last couple of days, in Prague about what makes the spaces that we've been creating important. And for me, it's then actually how we create the space differently for having conversations about transformation that is part of the transformation process itself. And the things that really stand out for me that we've experienced, at least in Prague, where I've been, and I'm assuming the same in Sydney, is that there's something about that sort of ethos. The things that I value about these spaces is, one, I can come in, I can talk about transformation without having to spend the first 10 minutes of a 15-minute talk explaining what transformation is. There's a sort of acceptance and an acknowledgement of that already, that we are talking about some deep kind of change, as Karen points out. The second thing is very much that we're encouraging more and more, and I think this is really important, to bring our whole selves into the room. You know, that this is trauma, this is change, this is fear that we're going to have to overcome if we're going to be able to really enact ourselves as part of that transformation. And that's really important, that we create the space for that, as well as joy and all the other things that come in there. But in this acknowledgement, we're in a massive fundamental change. And the other bit is, I think then we really need to be focusing on the how. And I hear that more and more in the conversations that are in the room in these spaces. It's yes, we're bringing theory in, but it's not about theory for theory's sake. There's an active desire. We're allowing ourselves to be active agents of that transformation. And then the fourth bit, I think, which I'm hearing from many people as well, is it feels like an inclusive space. And from there, to me, it's always been about opening up, bringing more people in, allowing them to feel that this is a safe space for them. And so moving forward, I feel that every one of us has a responsibility to create something like that somewhere, somehow, even if it's small, even if it's in a meeting, but just continue to really build on those sorts of principles, because it's that ethos and that space that we have that is transformative, that allows the transformation to happen around us. And I think that's really key.
Yeah. Who else wants to jump in? Their sense of where we are now, what our opportunities are.
Me. Here.
Yeah,
You see me?
Paulina, absolutely. No, I don't see you, but I hear you. Go for it.
Okay, thank you. No, I just want to follow up what Ian is saying. I think it's important. I want to focus in the young people, actually. Young people now are some of them, they are really don't know what to do with the present today, in the sense that they are scared. They are blaming us for what we are living then as a world, as a society. And I think that it's an opportunity, and in terms of transformation, because it's an opportunity, and I see it in my students and in my girls. They are not girls anymore, but you know, is to help them to navigate transformation, because they are ready for transformation. We have to be very careful not to put all the responsibility on them, because it's too much pressure. But they are in a moment that they really want to do things differently. They don't want to continue living in the world we are living them. So it's our responsibility, the adults' responsibility, to help them to navigate that with no pain, with no shame games, we know, but more in a positive way, in a proactive way, with hope and with action. And the other opportunity that I see is that even if you agree with IPCC or not, I think it's great that the IPCC report, sixth assessment report, finished, because a lot of people are asking me, well, when are you going to write the next IPCC? What do you need another IPCC? I think that now the IPCC the synthesis report has been released, is a space for action now. So I think that is very important, not to get together to write an next IPCC. Science has said a lot of what have to say. Now it's time for action. And the IPCC and science and everybody and everywhere, we are talking about transformation. So I think that this window of opportunity of not writing an IPCC for a couple of years give us the opportunity to action and to transform. And I think that we should take that opportunity and not ask, you know, for more information, more knowledge, more science. We just need to act now.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, I hear you. So what I'm hearing from the folks who've spoken so far, opportunities for action, new spaces, reaching the youth. Per, why don't you jump in?
Thanks, Bruce. And yeah, I just can sort of build on what other people have said already, that we are in large scale transformations right now, and we can expect increased uncertainty, because stepping into this sort of phase of transitioning, etc., is stepping into a world of uncertainties, and some of it is also violence. Violence can occur where you sometimes don't expect it. It's like we see when you study social movements, for example, that social movements can look very together, and they have a common purpose to get some regime to step down. But actually, when the regime is stepping down, the actors of the movement starting to fight each other, because they can agree on sort of that the current system has to go, but they haven't agreed on the path forward. So I think that's sort of a real important place for this community to be, to sort of support the navigation of those uncertainties. And I think that's also what I hear a lot of people focusing on. I think that's hopeful. Yeah.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I think let's go further. Oh, I'm sorry, David, would you like to jump in?
Yeah, sorry, I cannot raise my hand from this end.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, from the work my involvement in the Earth Commission, I think there is a need for a global systems approach to transformations as well. And I think there is a disconnect now between what we learn and we do on transformations at the local level, or our methods and everything, but also what is needed to inform global system change. And I think although the Earth Commission has identified two types of transformations, in practice, it's very difficult to implement those transformations. So I think we need to find ways of connecting the global and the local, and identifying the types of structural barriers that we have to transformations, the large markets, the large corporations, the information systems, and now we have artificial intelligence. We can talk later about that later. So I think that there is a need to find, because the Earth Commission is trying to find this safe and just corridor for people on the planet of 10 billion people in a generation. Can you imagine what it means? And I think that's a crucial challenge, and we need to act fast and deep, as also Karen was talking about.
Thanks. So opportunities and challenges have only multiplied and become more dense. This is a grave time, but also a time when our work is needed, and our ability to make spaces, hold conversations, reach new audiences, engage with different constituencies. We're as a community, there's so many possibilities. So I want to ask, what do you think are the important opportunities where this community could have an influence and impact going forward? Thinking about us as a collective, which of these possibilities can we have influence on, in terms of this community, in terms of the people who've been regularly showing up at these conferences, who consider themselves part of the transformations community? Johan, why don't you dive us in on that?
Yeah, thanks, Bruce. I think that just going on from what I said earlier, I think the spaces are really important, and if we can all create these sort of spaces, Bruce, I think that you've done a fantastic and incredible job to be able to start mobilizing. We started on very basic terms running conferences. Now we have this interactive hybrid sort of capability with some infrastructure behind us, and there's a great opportunity for all of us to choose to do something, and we now have the infrastructure to start sharing that and widening that. That's really, really important. And if we can hold the ethos of why we're doing it, if we can run them in transformative ways, then that in itself supports the transformation. That's really important. And then that raises a question for me, and I would like to throw this at Karen as she sort of answers the question of what can we do. But we all matter more than we think, to paraphrase Karen's book, and I would love to hear Karen's perspective on that. As how as individuals we actually are very influential in shaping the world in the way we think and the way we act. So yeah, I'd love to throw your question, Bruce, at Karen, but in that context of we matter more than we think.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Right. Thanks. Yeah. No, I think that idea of mattering, often in research, we think of like, how do we do research with impact? But we can be researchers with impact. And actually, we don't see the ripples and the impacts. And we see that, I think we experience it with these conferences where one thing leads to another, and we're still very much in this classical thing of classical paradigm of this leads to this, but as Per pointed out, there's a lot of uncertainty. And how do we actually mobilize these little like fractals of change, new patterns in society that starts with the new conversations, but really goes into what needs to shift and how do we shift it? So when we call for more action, it's really a quality of action and agency that we're looking for, and I think we tend to trivialize individual change is separate from collective change and systems change, rather than seeing that it is all interconnected, and that, through language, through meaning, through shared ideas, that we have a much bigger impact than we think. And to me, that's really exciting, because I do believe that we are underestimating our collective capacity for social change by looking in a very linear way, as if we're just going to, like extrapolate the present to the future, rather than use our imagination and think of like, what is that possibility that is like right in front of us here and now that we can't see. And as Paulina pointed out, young people can see it, and they're just like, well, they're not in the same structures of meaning making that we've grown up with or been exposed to. So I feel that that there's so much untapped potential, and building capacities within our own community and within society, stepping out of our comfort zones, stepping out of the academic towers, or however we describe them, and working with society is probably the most important thing we can do in right now to foster large-scale systems change.
I hear you, Karen. Yeah. Yeah, and us coming together with empowering ourselves as individuals, and then forming these all these different kinds of associations that we've created within among the people involved in the transformations community, like your involvement at IPBES and Sea Change, creating these new kinds of collectives and non-traditional associations and networks, communities of practice. That seems to be a big part of your agenda, is to sort of create new forms of institutions. Do you think that's fair to say?
Yeah, and I think it's many of us in sitting here in this room and online, that there's, I think that to have that courage to step out of our comfort zones and to do things differently is, and to recognize that, it does. This decade matters, and it's not that we can just continue and go on for the next assessment reports. And I really encourage people to engage with the transformative change assessment, because it's really assessing all that we're doing here right now. And so we need the critical reviews and suggestions and everything, because it is like shifting the narrative and shifting the storyline, putting people at the center of, we are the ones who are going to be creating these changes. So
yeah. Who else wants to speak to that, sort of how we're mobilizing this individual opportunity and potential and creating new forms of collective action? What kind of things have you been involved in that you'd like to share? Anyone else want to jump in on that?
I just wanted to say that I want to reflect a little bit on what we're saying about this idea that visions, also Ian has put that in his paper from the last conference. Visions are knowledge, and sometimes transformative visions are knowledge that are not sufficiently considered as an academic sometimes, because as Ian was saying, knowledge always is like evidence-based knowledge. But what we are creating are visions of hope. And to me, a positive tipping point comes when fear is transformed into hope, and then you mobilize this hope in a vision that then can actually create change. So I think that's the first point. But also, on the other hand, narratives and visions are not enough. We need also to be able to translate those visions in particular contexts, and to identify where the entry points to implement those visions. And I think that is something which is difficult. And third, I think one of the opportunities now, in my view, is to consider other forms of agency. And this idea of regenerative sustainability is basically to open up to the non-human, and how to create positive synergies between biophysical systems and social systems. And this is actually what I'm particularly interested these days.
Yeah, tell us a little bit more that kind of tangibly. What are those entry points for you? How are you bringing these ideas about narrative and vision into the world?
Yeah, well, in particular, I participated in the EU mission on climate change and other places, and I find that also it's very difficult to move the narrative on. As Karen was mentioning, a lot of money in Europe is being placed, both private and public, under the banner of transformation, but it's not really transformation. It's a lot of business as usual sometimes. It's just finding new ways to do the same thing instead of actually doing things differently at a different paradigm. So I think that the challenge is now basically that to think in full terms, full systems transformations, that includes cultural changes in paradigms, in practices, in a much broader and deeper and faster, because the whole idea of tipping point is how to accelerate change. So I think that's the challenge for me.
Yeah, thanks. Paulina, I'd like to bring you back in. Oh, well, you were just about to speak. Good timing.
Yes. So we're very connected. Yeah. So I want to make 2 points. I think that it's very important in our community that is a space for talking about values. And it's something that I really like from Karen always, that, you know, the work she does with the 3 spheres and everything is about value. But she's not the only one. I mean, many people here thinks that is important. And I think that to given the space in the community and outside to talk about value, not only about theory, not only about technical things, not only about methodology, but values are very important. If we talk more about values in our society, we'll be a different society. We don't have to be afraid of talking about value. We don't have to be afraid that we have different values. We don't have to be afraid to see from difference where we can go together. So I think that talking about values is very important and a very important opportunity, and is a pillar of a transformative change. And the other thing that I think is very important, and what I like so much about the transformation community is exactly that, the notion of community. I think that we are in so much trouble because we think that we are individuals, and we are not. we are one. We are all connected, and that is real. I mean, it's just the only thing that separates us from others is the skin, and it's not like that either, because I can touch her. You know, we can communicate, and we are one. We are one with nature. We are one with the others, and if we stop to thinking that we are individuals, and we really think that everything that we do influence others, influence nature, and that is going to influence us back, it is very important to feel, and I mean to think about that, to think in that way. And I think that this community for me, it's an inspiration in that. I feel very comfortable in this community. I feel very comfortable, even if we think different. I feel so comfortable that I can make you feel uncomfortable with my ideas. So I think that, so I think that they are those 2 points that I want to raise. It's important to talk about values, and it's important to not only think, but feel that we are not individuals, that we are community, and we are one, and we are connected.
I hear you. And a community is a space for tough conversations and making us feel uncomfortable in productive ways. I hear you. Hopefully we can continue to provide them. Per, I want to bring you in because I know you've been involved in so many diverse activities outside of academic work, including engaging with businesses and combining music and art and science, working with philanthropic organizations. What's on your plate these days in terms of community building? And how does that relate perhaps to the potential of what we could do in the transformations community?
The community building for me outside academia is about connecting to the sort of the cutting edge of transformative change. So really sort of almost cater to these change makers out there that are not sort of just talking about change, but actually that has that depth that many people have mentioned here. Like they have the complexity thinking, and they have the systems thinking, etc. And I think that's an opening to me, and that could be a big company CEO of very big companies. We are running programs for CEOs of this, the biggest Swedish companies, like including Volvo and Scania, etc. And then they have the whole right now the music industry, and there are big artists like Coldplay and others that are trying to do something different. So there is, and the whole ecosystem around these artists and festivals, etc. Festivals as places for imagining the future, etc. So I think for me, the community building is sort of trying to connect with these people, but also bring them together, because often they don't meet. And often maybe they are in the two or different part of a sort of a polarized society. So to me, it's also about making these spaces for people to meet, maybe for the first time in new ways, and sort of. But in that then, and that's the role of the community, this whole transformation community, really support that with what this community has to offer when it comes to transformative change. Because I think that the transformation literacy is not super high out there, but I think the energy and the will actually is.
Mm-hmm. Before we go on to the next question, anyone have any last thoughts or additional thoughts on that? Okay. So we have until 9, correct? Is that true?
No, we've got 6 minutes left, Bruce.
Okay, in that case, I think I'll transition to the last piece of this, which is to talk about what's next with the transformations community. So we've been focusing on creating an organization that expands on our 10-year conference series. And so some of the things we've been doing, including trying to get to know who we are as transformations practitioners. So we conducted a series of interviews, 60 interviews with different attendees at transformations conferences, to try to dig into who we are as transdisciplinary action researchers and reflective practitioners. What kind of work do we do? How do we engage stakeholders? What does that look like to do knowledge co-production? Why is that a commitment of ours? And we've also looked at our challenges, our lack of cohesion as a community, the absence of collective voice and political influence, the resource challenges we face, the barriers to collaboration, in order to see where we could provide value as a community moving forward. So we're still doing that. During this meeting, you have your theme catalysts in Sydney, and we have our sense makers in Prague. And online, we have our synthesizers. So everyone, it's sort of like a Dr. Seuss book. We have all of our people who are, as Otto said, sensing deeply what is the possibilities of emerging from this social space. And so please talk with them. And they've been sharing their ideas on our boards, and we'll be synthesizing and bringing some of those ideas together and sharing them with you over the coming months, and trying to dialogue with people who are interested in being and remaining to be a part of our community about what's that possibility. We're also developing our staff and infrastructure. I just want to note Thomas Hasselbuck, Nick Graham, Montezone, Anna Nugali, Paul Chukwama, Kim Sensor. These are our backbone of our organization. And I just want to thank them for their amazing work in creating and sustaining the infrastructure that we've needed: with registration, the publicity, the social media, a newsletter. Everything that we do is relying on these people, these weavers who are holding together our community right now, that capacity that Johan talked about. We have our publications, and I invite you all to consider contributing to them. The Social Innovations Journal is a peer-reviewed, practitioner-based journal. So we have a wide variety of formats and contributions that you can make to that coming out of this conference. We consider that our sort of default proceeding. So if you have something to share, please engage with that process, and we'll be publishing that this year. So rapid publication, diversity of formats. Check it out. It's a good way to get some of the news you can use out to a variety of different communities, academia and beyond. Then we have our special issue of the peer-reviewed journal, Current Research in Environmental Sustainability. And that's a great place to publish your research that you presented at this conference. And finally, we are continuing to be the editors of a special issue of this called State of Knowledge and Social Transformations Sustainability. That's in the highly cited journal Current Opinion in Environmental Sustainability. So if you have something that's more synthetic, a review piece that you'd like to see published there, please get in touch with me. We'd like to continue doing. We're doing workshops, we're doing conferences, and we'd like to do these in partnership with our members. We don't want to create these ourselves. We want ideas to come and to co-create them. So we're going to be reaching out and seeing what ideas for future convenings you'd like us to help you with. We consider ourselves to be capacity builders, backbone organization that can enable you to achieve more than you could achieve on your own. And with the experience that we have in throwing events, we can get it done pretty efficiently. We have the infrastructure. And we're also figuring out other new initiatives, like what does it mean to create new kinds of partnerships, our global theme. We want to think about how to design, launch, and maintain new kinds of transformations initiatives, like the things our panelists have been describing, like sea change. These startups, these entrepreneurial things that we do, how do we better create and support them? And even our site hosts, Czech Globe and the Institute for Sustainable Futures, are these kinds of creative alternative organizations that we create within our existing institutions to support transformative work. So we think that's a common interest that you all share, and we want to find out ways to support that. In Prague, we had a regular series during our afternoons about how to effectively design and manage transformations initiatives. So I invite you to go to the Huva app when you get home and have a little time to check out some of the sessions that were reported on themes about knowledge co-production, leadership, and evaluation. They were great sessions, and they're really worth checking out and seeing what's there. So we want to know, how can we support your work? What can we offer you? What would you like to offer us? How would you like to be a part of this community moving forward? We're an experimental organization. You can see that in our DNA by the descriptions of our founders and our conference organizers. Their creativity in putting together different kinds of conferences, workshop, panels, interaction. We want to continue that spirit moving forward and just try things. Be safe, fail. Experiment in the space that we have to see how we can support our membership to be more effective. So we continue to push the boundaries about what a professional organization could provide, and we want your partnership. We want you to be a part of that. We're an ongoing experiment. We want to not only support durable, impactful transformations initiatives, but also to become one ourselves. So this is, we think of this as more than just a knowledge exchange place. It's about partnerships and creating possibilities. So I'd like to thank the panelists for this session, for contributing so much to our community, for making it happen over the years and putting so much work in it, and noting that the community wants to provide the infrastructure that you didn't have when you put together your conferences to make this easy. So conference session hosts, workshop organizers can focus on the things they do best in place and bring in local communities into our events. So thank you again, and big hugs going out to all of you in Sydney from Prague and from our online audience. And it's I wish you the most fantastic time moving forward, and wish you more and better transformations. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Bruce, and all of the panel. That was fantastic. Really appreciate you all making the time. So we're at the end of the conference now. We're going to do a little bit of closing. So we're going to drop straight out. But thank you. Enjoy the rest of the time in Prague and online. And we'll see you soon. Bye.